Unknown to most people, day one had a lot to do with the ball. Like the tennis crier said, the surface really hadn't changed since the new variable formula started in 2011, the greatest hard courts in the world now by DecoTurf that can suit all styles of play. That's been the same 2011, 2012, and now 2013, but the ball continues to change. The Wilson US Open ball continues to get bigger. It's the biggest I've ever seen it this year. And as you can see, it's now bigger than the Penn ATP, which is the other ball the men use on the summer hard court season. And between the Penn ATP and the Penn Championship, the red one, the Penn Championship is the one the women use. Very close in size. The Penn Championship's a little shorter vertically. The Penn ATP is a little shorter horizontally. So in other words, the Penn ATP is not as wide as the Penn Championship, but it's a little taller. And this will lead to more bounce because it is a heavier ball. So it keeps the bounce a little bit. Whereas the Penn Championship is mainly, anything with championship after it is mainly for amateurs. And that means a little lighter, a little quicker, and it's a standard shape, which will just get through the court a little better. So that's why the women almost have trouble controlling it with the new rackets and the power of the women. But the Penn ATP is just too heavy. It can hurt their shoulders, so they have to use the Penn Championship. And the Wilson US Open, there's two other things. I mean, there's a bigger size, so this should be a slower ball now. The Wilson US Open used to be very small, a little bullet, a little rocket they used to call it. Much smaller than the Penn ATP. This is no longer the case. It's now bigger than these. But if we order these in order of heaviness, first let's do that. The heaviest one is the Penn ATP. And then I would say these are about a tie. The Penn Championship's lighter, and so is the Wilson one. But because the Wilson's bigger, I will put the Wilson last. Because it's bigger, so relatively, the rubber core is a little lighter. But in general, they're about the same. So that's a big difference. And then another one, let's put it in order of liveliness, which has to do with the rubber core, the chemicals used. Like Dunlop uses 14 different chemicals in its rubber core. The chemicals and also the air compression, the amount of air inside. Obviously, I can't really tell that without without knowing the facts from the manufacturer. But let's go by the order of liveliness. Believe it or not, we're in this order now. Back to that, which means Wilson's the lively this year, not last year, but this year, the Wilson US Open 2013, let me distinguish that, is the liveliest ball. Then the Penn ATP is mainly because of the rubber core. It does not have a lot. In fact, I would say, it's hard to know, it definitely has probably less compressed air in it than the Wilson, and along the lines of the Penn, maybe even less than the Penn Championship. But it has a certain kind of rubber core that can jump. So I think it might be a tad more lively than the Penn. But again, the Penn's light. So for offense, the Penn Championship is the fastest. If we just go by pure offense, it's a tough call, but I would almost go like this. And again, very tough call. Why? Penn Championship's the lightest. Because it's a little smaller as well. So it's the lightest one. So you think you can get more offense with this. The liveliest one is this one, but it's bigger, and it has a strong felt. This has a strong felt, and it's heavier. But because it's heavier, it will stay a little lower off the ground. So that makes a little more offense. But in general, I'd say these are the way they would work for offense. So the women have to get used to a ball that's not as light and is bigger. The men have to get used to a ball that's not as heavy and is a little bit bigger. And they all have to get used to the jump, the liveliness of this ball, the way it jumps off the racket and off the ground. Now, what does this all mean? Well, on day one, we saw a guy like Verdasco, who is not in good form right now. Why he played the clay events after Wimbledon is beyond me. He had a great Wimbledon. He needed to rest up. Instead, he played those clay events, wore himself out, Didn't come back until the Winston-Salem event right before the U.S. Open, and he was completely out of form. His footwork's terrible. It continued yesterday against Dodig. The only reason he was even in the match is because Dodig himself is totally fatigued and exhausted. He retired from Cincinnati with exhaustion. He looked tired the whole match, but he fought, and he's in better form. He did take a break after Wimbledon and then played Atlanta, Washington, D.C., Canada, and Cincinnati. So he had a lot of matches in. He was in much better form. His footwork was actually better even though he was tired, and he was able to control this jumpy, lively U.S. Open ball. And he got some extra power off of it because it was jumping, whereas Verdasco, with all his massive power, could barely keep it in the court. When he really concentrated, and it was more of a mental fatigue kind of thing with him being out of form, he definitely looked in better fitness. I mean, he did not seem nearly as tired as Dodig, but he had trouble keeping the ball in the court. Now, you have a guy like Nadal, and you're like, well, why can he keep it in the court? He has the same whip motion as Verdasco. He hits it really hard, really aggressive like Verdasco. And Verdasco has the spin, maybe not as much as Nadal, but pretty close. He has a lot of spin. So what's the problem? Footwork. It's that simple. Nadal got knocked out of Wimbledon early, and then he took a big break, came back, played Canada, deep run, played Cincinnati, deep run, took a week off, and he is ready to go. I mean, perfect scheduling. Verdasco, deep run in Wimbledon, plays clay events 3 in a row, is exhausted, skips the big hard court events, and comes back for North Carolina, or Winston-Salem, I should say, and he's a mess, and his footwork's a mess. So that little bit of footwork with a big, powerful guy like Verdasco or Nadal, that ball is going to jump, and it's going to be hard to keep in the court. I'm talking about the Wilson U.S. Open ball. But with Nadal, it will, because his footwork, and he's really on right now, you know, he's getting great effect with this ball. He's spinning it enough, accurate enough, it's landing in the court and jumping off and out of the court. So Harrison didn't even play that badly, though. Harrison has a new coach. He's, tweaking his game. It's not a good time to play Nadal. But he didn't even play that badly, and he was pretty aggressive, but Nadal was just a monster, powerhouse. And again, this ball is suiting him greatly. And, of course, the surface. Another one, Nishikori and Evans, another big upset of the day. Evans used this lively ball to his advantage. Luckily for him, he had qualifying. I thought it might have worn him down a bit, and it probably did. But he got used to the ball. Nishikori didn't have that chance. And Evans jumped all over him, shot the ball through the court so quick. Nishikori was too defensive originally, was kind of knocked off guard. Then when he tried to get aggressive and offensive himself, he had no form to do it. He's had injuries. He hasn't been playing much. His form's been terrible, and it came and it bit him. I thought because he hasn't played a lot, he'd have a lot of energy and he'd get his game back. I thought Evans would have been tired after all the tennis this summer and the qualifying. So I was really surprised he wasn't more tired and more, have like a letdown. I thought he'd have a letdown. He didn't. He was in form. Nishikori wasn't, and it went the complete opposite of what I expected. Another guy, Gulbis and Heidermaro, that match in court 4. It was not a TV court, couldn't see it, but I can guarantee you, Gulbis had 2-1 lead, and the break at 4-3, serving 4-3, and he was 2 games away, and he totally crumbled. And I can guarantee you that he wasn't getting balls in the court, just like Verdasco. He made a little bit of a run at Montreal, but even then I watched some of those matches. He didn't look that great. He was very inconsistent, and he's never really been right either this summer. He had promise earlier in the year, and now it's back to shoddy footwork again, a lot of power. So that means with the U.S. Open 13 ball, trouble keeping it in the court. Heidermaro, who has had some injuries lately, has had trouble with his serve because of his, I think it's a shoulder or something with the serving for sure. His serve was terrible yesterday against Gulbis. I think he served 37%, but he fought, and once he started fighting and keeping the ball in the court, Gulbis couldn't keep the ball in the court himself, and out the window. Of course, as I called it, Gulbis is Gulbis. That's what I said in my preview. I don't know much more to say than that. And then finally, Venus and Flipkens. I said Venus would love this ball. It was a matter of how Venus's back was and her sickness. Well, she looked the best she's looked all year. Her back looked fine. She said it feels good. Her serving was improving. She loves this ball. It jumps off her racket, but she hits rocket shots, and she likes to come to the net. And something I didn't expect, coming to the net is paying dividends with this ball. So again, this ball is leading, the liveliness of it, but the size of it though, but together is leading towards more aggression, not just from the baseline, but getting that point over with, even at the net. So it's very interesting to see how Federer is going to deal with this ball. But because it's so big and with the heavy felt, a guy like Nadal should be able to pass him pretty easy on the volleys, but we will see. If Federer is serving, the big thing is serving. Serving well will be a huge thing with this ball, and Nadal did that yesterday as well. So that's what we have so far after day one with the tennis ball.